A 27-year-old Alabama woman is behind bars after giving birth to a drug-affected baby. On the 26th of January, the Morgan County Department of Human Resources contacted the Priceville Police Department saying that Beth Monica Schillinger gave birth the day before and that the newborn tested positive for narcotics. On the 15th of February, officers arrested Beth at a Somerville home on outstanding warrants for failure to appear stemming from a burglary case on the 27th of November, when Beth allegedly cut a lock to someone's shed on a property in Berry Road and stole several items. She's charged with chemical endangerment of a child, unlawful possession of drug paraphernalia, stolen property less than $1,500, failure to appear, and obstruction and probation violation. She's held at the Morgan County Jail in lieu of a $37,800 bond. 32-year-old LaVaughn Barnes is behind bars after a decomposing body was found in his sister's backyard earlier this month. LaVaughn lived in the basement of the property, while his sister and niece lived upstairs. Authorities responded to 1336 Kearney Street Northeast in Washington, D.C. after the suspect reported the discovery of human remains while clearing bamboo from the yard. Authorities arrived and observed the victim's headless and handless body inside a black plastic trash bag, and it appeared that the victim had been shot once in the stomach. Police said that LaVaughn's sister identified the victim as Abdulia Arias Lopez. He was a handyman she'd known for 5 years. She told them that she last hired him in November, but as far as she knew, he never showed up for the job and stopped returning her messages. The medical examiner determined the remains to be human and that the death of the victim was ruled a homicide. Investigators questioned LaVaughn and he allegedly confessed to killing Abdulio. He showed up at the property on the 4th of November to paint the kitchen. LaVaughn said that Abdulio showed him paint, and Abdulio put the paint down and turned around to walk away. LaVaughn told police that he became angry for unknown reasons when he tased Abdulio in the back of the head, beat him and stabbed him twice. It's believed that he then shot him in the abdomen. LaVaughn said that after killing Abdulio, he went to Ace Hardware store to purchase an axe to cut up the victim's remains in the basement. He said he then cut off their head and arms and put the body in the trash bag in the backyard. LaVaughn's sister told police that her brother is mentally challenged. LaVaughn was arrested and charged with first-degree murder while armed, and is held without bond. A man is arrested following the fatal shooting of a man in Hazard, Kentucky over the weekend. At 12:15 a.m. on Saturday the 18th of February, authorities responded to a residence at 58 Gamble Drive on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the property, they found 29-year-old Ryan Whittaker unresponsive in the driveway in front of the house with multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene by the Perry County Coroner's Office. During the investigation, police discovered there had been a verbal altercation between Ryan and 27-year-old Troy Campbell that turned physical, causing shots to be fired. It's unclear what the argument was about. He was taken to the Kentucky River Regional Jail, where he was charged with 1 count of murder. The autopsy and toxicology reports are pending, and the incident remains under investigation. A 22-year-old Fort Pierce, Florida man is behind bars after he allegedly killed his roommate because the roommate threw the suspect's plate full of food on the ground. Brian Marquez was arrested on Sunday the 12th of February. Authorities said they were called to the house at 405 South 18th Street when the homeowner said he saw blood in the backyard and a foot partially exposed from a shallow grave. When officers arrived at the scene, they found a body somewhat buried in an 18-inch deep hole. An autopsy of the body confirmed the person buried was a Hispanic man between the ages of 35 to 45 years old. He had significant facial injuries, broken ribs and a broken nose. Police were led to Brian because he also lived on the property. He rented a small shed just north of the property from the homeowner. Brian was questioned about the body and whether or not he had anything to do with the murder. Authorities said that Brian confessed to the crime, saying he killed his roommate who he only knew as Guanajuato. Brian said the victim threw his plate full of food on the ground and he disrespected him. He didn't do anything immediately, but after having some drinks, he decided to approach Guanajuato. Brian said he started punching him in the ribs, face and nose, which knocked him to the ground. Once Guanajuato was on the ground, Brian said he grabbed dirt and gravel and shoved it into his mouth. When the suspect yelled at the victim to stand up, the victim didn't move, and Brian said that's when he realized Guanajuato was dead. Instead of calling police, Brian said he dragged the body across the yard, dug a shallow grave, and buried the victim and then went to sleep. Authorities said that both the suspect and the victim were illegal immigrants, and that Brian had been in touch with his family trying to arrange a bus back to Mexico. Brian is charged with murder and he's held at the St. Lucie County Jail on an immigration hold without bond. 50-year-old Derek Lamont Simmons of Arizona is behind bars after he allegedly beat a co-worker to death with a baseball bat in the cafeteria of an Intel building over the weekend. The incident occurred at around 6:15 a.m. on Saturday the 18th of February at a microprocessing manufacturing facility located at 4500 South Dobson Road in Chandler. Derek was in front of the building carrying 2 duffel bags. Witnesses told police that after night shift employees left, Derek approached a man at a table in the cafeteria, and for an unknown reason he attacked him with a knife, hatchet, and then struck him multiple times in the head with a baseball bat. Another co-worker sitting at the same table was attacked when he stood up to confront Derek. Authorities responded to the scene and found the first victim dead from blunt force trauma injuries. The second victim was transported to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Derek was booked into the Maricopa County Jail on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated assault, and he's been held on a $1 million bond. Derek has a previous felony conviction for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The deceased victim's name has not been released until the next of kin is notified. The motive of the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. Pregnant mother 25-year-old Ivy Marie Lewis is accused of murdering a 3-year-old son after punishing him for urinating on a mattress earlier this month. At 7:35 p.m. on the 12th of February, authorities responded to a 911 call from an acquaintance of the suspect. He found that the child was unresponsive and cold to touch in the apartment they shared in Tacoma, Washington. Detectives said they found multiple injuries to the boy's chest, side, arms and legs, consistent with being struck by an object. His face was discolored and bruised with several cuts, and he had burn marks all over his face. Dried blood splatter was found on the walls nearby. It was also noted that there were several small marks on the victim's chest, which appeared to coincide with the taser located on the kitchen table. Despite attempting life-saving measures, the child died at the scene. An autopsy confirmed the child died from blunt force trauma to the head. Ivy first claimed that her son ran into the wall several times and hit his head, which he did regularly, but later admitted that she used a meth days before and had spanked the child with a belt and an electrical cable for having wet the bed. The man who called 911 told police he had gone to the apartment after watching the Super Bowl to hang out. When he arrived, he found that the child was unresponsive and immediately sought help. Later in the police interview, he claimed that he'd seen Ivy hit the boy with an electrical cable as punishment for wetting his bed. Ivy was already under supervision of Child Protective Services, as the child had previously been in foster care from the age of 10 months until 6 months ago. When she was questioned about how she would discipline her sons, she said that she would make the boy stand in the corner for timeout or smack his hand. She admitted to hitting the boy with a belt when she found him hugging a girl. Ivy was unable or unwilling to provide information about other adults who may have had access to the apartment or the children, and declined to provide information about the 16 hours before her son's death. Ivy has another 1-year-old son who was found inside the home and was taken into protective custody. Ivy's been charged with murder, and she's held at the Pierce County Jail on a $2 million bond. Ivy has an extensive criminal history, including 11 prior arrests and 2 prior felony convictions, unlawful possession of a stolen vehicle, and unlawful possession of a firearm. The investigation into the matter continues. 3 teenage girls, including one who was 6 months pregnant, were fatally shot Saturday night in Texas by a man who then killed himself in an apparent murder-suicide. A 12-year-old girl said her mother's 38-year-old boyfriend sexually assaulted her and shot 3 other teens inside the house, located at 2013 2nd Street in Galena Park. The girl and a 1-year-old niece escaped to a neighbour's house to call for help. Galena Park police found the bodies of 3 girls, aged 19, 14 and 13, dead with gunshot wounds inside the house. Police recovered a gun next to the 38-year-old man who was found dead inside a master bedroom from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Officials have not released the identity of the shooter or the teen victims. However, family members identified the slain sisters as 13-year-old Melanie Torres and 19-year-old Sayora Gill, who was 6 months pregnant. A 14-year-old girl, Laisha Perez, a friend of the family, also died. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said the man shot a pregnant 19-year-old girl and 2 younger teens and sexually assaulted a 12-year-old girl. He said after that, he told the 12-year-old girl to go ahead and run from the house. She ran out of the residence without any clothing, trying to seek assistance. She ran to a nearby house with her 1-year-old niece and called police. The teen's mother was not at home at the time. The 12-year-old girl was treated at a nearby hospital.